Area of a trapezoid. I have a picture of 3 trapezoids here. Let's just go back and remind ourselves what trapezoids are. Trapezoids are quadrilaterals, 4-sided shapes with one set of parallel sides. So each of these are the one set of parallel sides. And remember, the symbol for parallel looks like this. Kind of those little arrows. So each of these figures, these quadrilaterals, have one set of parallel sides, so they are trapezoids. A little bit more about trapezoids. They always have 2 bases. One will be called base 1 and the other will be called base 2. It doesn't really matter which one you call base 1 and base 2. So I have labeled this parallel side as base 1 and then this one is base 2. What is important is that your bases will always be the sides that are parallel. So these sides right here are not parallel, so they are not the bases. So when we're talking about area, remember, area is the measure of the number of squares that will fill the surface of an object, or that will cover the surface of a 2-dimensional shape. So what we've been talking about is how to turn 2-dimensional shapes all into squares. So if I were to put a grid over this and I was just to draw squares on here, I couldn't do that. I would have a hard time because I have some triangles here, or 2 triangles at the end, so I can't fit squares perfectly in there. So let's take a look at the formula for area of a trapezoid, and let's try and relate that to squares and see where it came from. So the formula for area of a trapezoid is 1/2 the base 1 plus base 2. You see how it has that little subscript 1 and subscript 2. That means base 1 and base 2 times the height. Another way to think about it would be just similar to a triangle. Base 1 plus base 2 times the height divided by 2. Because remember, multiplying by 1/2 and dividing by 2 does the same thing. So this is actually the formula that I'm going to use, but I want you to recognize that the formula can also be written as 1/2 times the base, sum of the bases times the height. So where does that formula come from? Well, so like this. So this was my original, and I just made a copy. So I have actually 2 trapezoids. So then what you're going to do is flip the second trapezoid, or you could flip the first one over like this. So now I still have those 2 trapezoids, but I took this second trapezoid and I flipped it around. So now let's take a look at the overall shape that we have created. And actually I'm going to get rid of these other ones so that all we have is the duplicated one. So what shape did we create when we duplicated the trapezoids and we flipped one over? You might see that we actually created a parallelogram. And remember, the area of a parallelogram is the same as the area for a rectangle, and that is the base times the height. So now let's take a look at our formula again, as area equals base 1 plus base 2 times the height divided by 2. Well, what did we do? We have to take base 1, let me do that in red, a darker color, plus base 2, because that's your whole, the length of one whole side, times the height. So same as the formula for a rectangle, but we just added our bases together to make the whole base. So the length of the whole base times the height would give us the area of this entire parallelogram. But remember, we actually are only looking for one trapezoid, so we have to divide by 2. So again, we just took our entire base, which is actually base 1 plus base 2, and we have to multiply it by the height, and then divide by 2 because we only want the area of one trapezoid. So let's actually practice using that formula. So here we have a trapezoid. The first thing that you want to do, well, actually, let's write out our formula. Base 1 plus base 2. And remember, it's important that you add those bases together first before you multiply by the height, because you first have to figure out the whole, the complete base. So we've written out our formula. Now we want to identify our bases, base 1 and base 2, and then identify your height. So remember, I tell you to always highlight your bases and your height. So now all we're going to do is practice plugging that into our formula. So base 1, 5, plus base 2, which is 10, times our height, which is 6, all divided by 2. All right, so then we have 5 plus 10 is 15 times 6, all divided by 2. Oops. So now 15 times 6 is 90 divided by 2. And what is 90 divided by 2? It is 45. And what were our units? Centimeters. So it was 45 centimeters squared. So that's our final area. So literally 45 square centimeters would fill the inside surface of our parallelogram. Our trapezoid. All right, so let's look at another one. Let's write down our formula. Area equals base 1 plus base 2 times the height divided by 2. So first thing I want you to do after you write out your formula, identify your bases. Remember, bases will always be our parallel sides. Now we have to identify our height. The height is always going to be what forms that 90-degree angle with your base. Remember, this is not our height. We can't measure somebody when they're slanted. So let's just plug in our values to our formula. So base 1, we could go with 14 plus 9. That's base 1 plus base 2 times the height of 12, all divided by 2. So 14 plus 9 is 23 times 12 divided by 2. So 23 times 12, need some more space, is 276 divided by 2. So 276 divided by 2 is 138. What were our units again? Still centimeters. So 138 square centimeters will fill the surface. All right, so make sure that you pause and rewind because this can be a little bit confusing. I just really felt like it was important to show you where the formula comes from. And after that, it's just a matter of identifying your bases and your height and using the formula.